everyone. Welcome to Dome Talk. Just gonna give people another minute or so to join up, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, it's 6:01, so let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dome Talk. I am Aaron Moran, and I'll be moderating this talk and trying to post helpful links in the chat and some pictures as we go through the questions. We'll try to focus on the questions that came in before the meeting, and then we'll do our best to get to any that you have in the chat. We try to stick to 1 hour, but we may go over, so we completely understand if you need to get out of here early. For those who haven't been here before, I'll start with a short intro of who we are. Natural Spaces Domes is owned and operated by Dennis Johnson and Tessa Hill. Located in North Branch, Minnesota, we have a dome complex consisting of an office dome, 3 model dome homes, a screen porch dome, 2 workshop domes, and a mini dome, which is our option for like a small living space. And as always, we invite you to visit us for in-person tours. Natural Spaces domes are special because they're designed to be easy to build, beautiful, healthy, energy efficient living spaces, while still providing you the best housing value around. Our staff consists of 13 people, with Dennis, Tessa, and Derek leading the organization. Dennis is the dome guru, and he has decades of experience as a designer, contractor, builder, and having designed over 1,200 domes worldwide, he knows what works and what doesn't. His patented dome connector system is the best available, and he sees to it that someone is there to help you with every step of your dome dream. And then next we have our project manager, Derek Miller. He joined the NSD team a few years ago, bringing with him a lifetime of construction experience. And he handles a wide variety of responsibilities, from collaborating with Dennis on projects and client contact to working in the shops to refine building and techniques. And while he's deeply familiar with the dome construction process from the ground up, he's also the video guy, filming and creating educational videos for our classes and tours and such things like the virtual dome school. So with that, Dennis, you want to say hi? Dennis, you're still muted.
There we go.
Okay. I'm the wife. I'm one of the owners, and they think I don't do much, but I do.
It's my partner, our partner. So,
Busy,
yeah, she's
busy with
busy.
lots of things. so.
Yes, yes, we are.
Nice, nice.
So Tessa has her own nonprofit that she runs called Kids for Saving Earth. And she's run that for about 30 years.
Yep, I'm still trying to save the earth. It's very difficult work, so,
Hasn't been saved yet
no.
entirely.
Not quite, but
You guys
we're
get
working on
going.
it.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Tessa. And Derek, if you want to say hi real quick.
Hi, everybody. Yep, just been a busy year, good year, lots of domes going up. So that's all good news. That's helping save the earth, right, Tessa? Getting some good energy efficient homes up there. So, so yeah, yep, that's all I got for you.
Cool. Okay, so we'll get on with the first question here. Can you talk about shipping prices to Australia, specifically the dome connectors for a 29-foot mid-profile? And can you inform of any other domes that are built in Australia, and any relevant content that we have with that?
Yeah, so the last dome we shipped out close to Australia would have been Wilson, New Zealand. And this was a little while ago, so of course the prices have changed. Of course, nowadays when it comes to shipping, the prices seem to change week to week. But at that time, it was a little about $700, a little over $700 for the actual shipping. And then there was some exchange fees and some other cost in there. So I think it was right around 900 and some dollars to get it there. And then we had a little bit of a crate fee, so a little, just over $1,000. So nowadays, and that was a little bit of a bigger kit than what the 29-foot would be. So it's probably about double the weight, maybe even close to triple the weight. But I would say nowadays, just kind of a rough ballpark, it's probably gonna be closer to maybe $1,500 for everything said and done to get it from here to Australia. But we'd have to get all the addresses to get the actual a closer number, because it goes on a rail car, goes in shipping, it has a lot of different people that have to touch it to get it there. So it takes a little bit to get an actual price, but that would be a pretty good ballpark. And I don't know if you're here with us or not, because I'm sure there's a big time difference, Mick, but I don't know if that kind of helps answer. And as usual, I always tell people too, feel free to kind of jump in as we're asking your question if you got more to the question than that, or you need more details. But I would say about 1,500 is my best guess in today's dollars.
And
Good.
that quick video that I showed was actually the result of the dome that we sent there. Sort of like a concert venue. It's really cool. It was like a little trailer for it. Really cool dome that was set up.
Yeah, they kind of do some fun stuff with lighting in that dome.
There's 39,000 LED lights.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty nifty.
it is. That's pretty cool. It's fun to see those kind of projects go up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is a very small class for the Zoom class, I should say. It's the holidays. I think that was a big part of it. So we appreciate those of you that are here, and we certainly will deal with at least 3 of you that I'm looking at the names here, and that have questions, and we can get into those. So we'll look at talking to, there's a couple here that don't have questions, and we'll say, think about it. You might want to join in, and there'll be a lot of extra time, because it's basically these 6 questions that we do have. We can drag it out. We won't do that, but we have enough knowledge to talk for an hour on these 6 questions, but we want to get to the crux of what you're looking for on this. So go ahead. I think Ethan is here. Yeah. So want to read that next question there, Aaron?
Sure. Okay, so from Ethan from Minnesota. Yes, could a cupola design also function as a solar chimney, or would a separate structure be needed? It is interested in passive cooling and that sort of subject in general, if we can talk about that at all.
Yeah, we're here in Bear Creek Dome. We do have a cupola on top. And from the standpoint of cooling, we do it all the time. Right now, we're going to be breaking a record. What, 100? We're going to be over 100, I think, tomorrow, which breaks our record.
Wow.
So in the evening, it drops down to about 65. That's what it's going to be tonight. So we have, actually, the window that I have up on top in the cupola is open right now during the daytime. And I'm going to turn the computer around to show you, if you want to switch to my screen, I'll show you this large bank of windows that we have, and they face southeast. So we're dealing with something that has 9 triangle skylights in here. So it's about 20 feet high. But down below, what we're dealing with is we've got these ventilating windows that open up. These are 3-foot high windows by 3 foot wide, and there's 2 of them on each one. So there's 6 windows down here that we can open up all along the base. And you can't really see it too well but there's a drop off on the hill going down to a creek that's 30 feet below in a very heavily vegetated treed area. So it stays cool down there. So in the evening, that air is going to come through the windows when we open those up. And as long as we've got 1 or 2 windows open up in the cupola, in the view cupola, I'm going to take the computer and I'm going to tilt it back so we can see the view cupola up on top. And right now there's a window open right there. One of our windows, these 2 windows are motorized. So we've got one open and we're just going to leave that open basically all summer long. So the heat buildup that we get from all the sun coming in during the daytime in the morning, because it faces east, southeast, may build up the heat inside the house, but it's going to go right out that chimney. These 2 windows that we have on top are for the 3rd level grandkids sleeping loft. There's nothing to do with the ventilation, but this has everything to do with the ventilation up in that cupola. We also have a ceiling fan up in there so we can draw the air up or down. It's a reversible fan. So those are the things that we normally do in a lot of our domes. I'm going to say, about 1/3 of our domes would have a view cupola on it. I want to switch back, sit down here a minute. And the other 2/3, we have Velux skylights that are going to be up near the top of the dome. We don't do skylights in the very top center of the dome. The roof pitch that we have on top of our cupola is a 412 pitch. We're also dealing with the mosquitoes here. You may see me swatting and getting mosquitoes away. It's mosquito season here in Minnesota. But the Velux skylights can be electrically controlled. That's really the easiest way to deal with this. But they also can be opened with a crank if they can be reached. Ours are really tall up there. We do have a pole. They can be reached once they get up to that 3rd level sleeping loft. I can actually open 2 more windows on the opposite side if need be. We'll see tomorrow when our heat wave comes and we break the record, what'll happen. But right now we're running, let me just check, make sure. You got this one on too up here? You just turned it on. It's very cool in here. She just turned the upper mini split system, which is that white thing that you see on the top of your screen. So that's the mini split at that level, about 12 feet off the 2nd floor. But what we do is we've got the master bedroom, and you can't see because the light's not on, but it's over there in this door. And that is a 9,000 BTU mini split in that room. And it's a large opening. This opening right here, you can see the TV set right there, that swings around into this opening. So the opening is wider than a normal door. It's 54 inches wide. So that air conditioner in that mini split comes out into this room. Cold air drops. So by turning that on during the daytime in the morning, it's going to cool this whole level. And we basically have 1 floor living level here. The upstairs is really bedrooms for the kids and guests. So we live on this level. So that's what we're doing with the mini splits. Passively, it can work as long as that evening temperature drops below, say, 68, 66 degrees. But at 70 degrees, and what do you want it inside? You'd like it at about 72 to 75 or 74, 75 during the summertime. So that's how you can work with this. We also have a large 7-foot wide French doors, I'll turn it around this way. So it's a very wide opening. It's 8 feet high. So that opening is screened in, and you're looking out at the screen porch outside. But so with that, you're seeing this opening right here, we can open up. And again, with the cupola windows open or Velux windows on the top, you've got a natural air current in the dome. Passive solar this is what it is. Cooling from that standpoint. I think what your question really is what else would you have to do? You've got to have a vent near the top of your dome. We see a lot. Tens and tens, I'm going to say, are 100 domes that we've seen where they call us, they got a problem. It's so hot on the top of their dome. What can they do? And we say, well, open the window. Oh, we don't have windows that open up in the top. Well, there's your first problem. You want to buy a Velux from us? Go ahead. You want to buy it from big box stores, but you need a window. You need a skylight. I shouldn't say a window. You need a skylight up there. Put the skylight in and open it up. If you buy the Velux electric skylight, there's a rain sensor on it. Guess what? It's a drop of rain on that, and the unit closes automatically. You can get a solar-powered unit for remodeling purposes. You don't need any wiring at all. It will operate. There it is, and it's the VSS. So that particular window is going to open and close. Thank you, Aaron. It does work extremely well. And if you're worried about the fact that it's solar powered and a small battery in there, and what happens when the battery runs out? Well, if your skylight is open and you leave and it's going to rain out, that's fine. It'll close. But if you're worried about it running out of battery space, guess what? The battery does not shut off. It gets down to a certain level, and if your skylight is open, it automatically closes it before it runs out of power to close the unit. So it's perfect. What does it cost? Well, with the flashing package that you need, it's around, depending on the size that you get, it's around $1,000. Some are $900, some are $1,100. It's in that range. So that's what you need. One of them, at least. Put it on the prevailing winds. Figure out where your winds are in the summertime from a cooling standpoint, if that's what you're going to use it for. And then you can open up that leeward side and it'll suck the air out of the inside. Or the wind going over the dome will help suck it out. So this is your natural passive cooling during the summertime. If you're in Phoenix and it's 100 at night and 125, something like that, right?
Yep. It is warm. It cools down and, sometimes below 100 at night if you're lucky in Phoenix, middle of summer. Yeah.
Derek has lived there for many years.
Yeah. It's
so passive solar cooling is probably not going to work in that kind of a zone. But for the rest of the people in the country, it'll probably work just fine.
And it's funny, Dennis and I were talking about this question earlier, and we had a group of maybe 4 people that came to a dome school several years ago, and they were doing a research paper on this in domes, actually. And so there's some cool articles out there where they really get in depth on how well it works in a dome, because the shape of the dome makes it work a little bit better than other shapes would. I mean, it works everywhere, but domes work exceptionally well. So kind of interesting.
There's such a thing as a swamp cooler. That's an old-fashioned, I say old-fashioned. really, I mean, it's been around for hundreds of years. But we're dealing with the new technology here with you got to watch what you have inside from a moisture level. You got to control it. You got to have fresh air coming in. We're going to talk about that later on in the couple of other questions we've got. But as far as cooling is concerned, Ethan, really, I can't say enough about the dome. We have a dome that I lived in for 20 years. Yeah, 25 years. And that's attached to our office dome. And the office dome has a cupola on it too. And in that situation, it's the same way. There was no floor in the original, they call it the Forest Dome. And we would open the windows of the polo cranes because they were 6 feet up, so really close. They didn't have to be electrified. So those windows would open up. We can open up whichever side we wanted. We didn't open up the south side later in the day because that side of the house and the shingles were hotter. So you learned, we're going to open the north side, the side of the sun, or the east side, I should say, too. So it's those kind of things that it's just a natural fact of the dome, of how well it works and how easy it is to accomplish that. You just, you might have seen a dome and you go up in the upper level and it's hot. It does not have to be that way. Our return air for the furnace system this is radiant floor heated, so it's different. But we have a hot air furnace in both the office and the other dome, the Forest Dome. And that has its return air from the top of the dome. The office has a 16 inch by 30 inch shaft. That's what it is. That goes down, and that is the return air on the furnace, which is the air conditioner. So right now, when Aaron is sitting over there, that's kept at a very comfortable about 75 degrees during the daytime. And it's extremely easy because of this airflow that we have. We've been in a couple of domes where the heating guy came along and said, well, you got to have a return on the main floor. And you got to have a return in that basement or the lower level. And he puts it in. And he ruins the whole airflow in the whole dome. And we go into it and we tell people, close it up, put a piece of cardboard over that vent, do whatever you have to do, make 100% of that air come from the top of the dome. As long as you have a stairway to a lower level, open that stairway up. This air will flow around in the dome. I think we touched on that enough, maybe?
Yeah, I think you got here. Answered all
We
that.
have our next question as well, which is somewhat related to the same thing. So we have
Sure.
Ken in Canyon Lake, Texas. He wants to know, first, do we have any domes in the Austin or San Antonio area of South Texas, but also what considerations are there for design and construction for a 2A climate zone for heating and cooling? So kind of a similar topic there. And 2A is, of course, a pretty warm climate.
Yeah.
Take it
So
away.
Yeah, so if we do have a dome over there, actually, that's I think you were saying, Dennis, it's actually right in between Austin and San Antonio, and the customer's last name is Sun. We call it the Sun Dome, and there's a lot of great photos of it. I think, is it up for sale currently, Dennis? So
He'll take an offer.
yeah, yeah, I think so. There's a lot of photos just because they may be selling it, but as you can see, it's a triple dome complex. So that would be right in that area, and he would probably be up for you possibly taking a look at it. So yeah, it's interesting because there's so many aspects that go into properly sizing your systems, and a lot of building departments now require you to fill out paperwork like energy calcs showing how many windows do you have, what's your total surface area, what's your R value. All these things that they need to know, that also would be how you would determine the sizing of your equipment. One thing people sometimes don't take into consideration is a dome typically has less surface area than a conventional house of the same size, which is part of what makes them so energy efficient. So if you size everything based on that criteria, then you usually reduce the need by, close to 30%. So depending on some factors in there, but so yeah, so I'm looking at this again here. He's got, that's really about it. So 2A, obviously you need, unlike Minnesota, you got to deal more with the cooling. You're going to be in a drier area. So, you don't have to worry so much about the humidity, maintaining humidity, as you do just straight up cooling. But what Dennis has in his dome would, something a little larger than that would actually be perfect for something like this. So, what are you gonna say?
Go back to the climate map, Aaron. Put that up on the screen. The climate zones in the US, there's 7 zones from Miami-Dade #1 up to where we are, right between the 6 and the 7 on eastern Minnesota, right in there.
Yeah.
Now, this is an old map. The new map has changed. And guess what? What's happening? Well, these lines are getting further north by, in some cases, more than one county, like 2 or 3 counties. All these little squares that you see are counties. So the line that we're on between 6 and 7 hasn't changed much, but down there between 5 and 6 and 4 and 5 and the 3 and 4, those have changed more than you can think. There's a vertical line that starts up between the Dakotas and Montana. That black line that goes down and cuts through basically the middle of Texas. Everything to the west of that is their dry climate zone. To the east of it, it's the moist climate zone. Guess what? That's moved from when this map was made around 100 miles further east. So the line is moving. It's not the whole state of North Dakota, but it's a couple of counties, several counties. It's moved over to the east. So those counties along that western border of North and South Dakota and Nebraska and Kansas, they're going to get drier. It's going to change the vegetation. It's going to change the crops, growing seasons, what you grow, what you can't grow, what you can grow. So this is a major thing with us. We look at this map all the time when we're talking to you about designing your dome plan. This is a big deal with us. We have to know where you're building and how you're going to live in that house. And we talked about passive cooling. It's also passive solar gain, but passive solar gain is a hard one to deal with. You got to have something to store that heat in there. So it's much harder to deal with. We've got a few domes actually here in Minnesota, south central Minnesota. We tried a large, call it a trom wall. It's just a concrete block wall in a greenhouse space with a lot of windows. It was a 4-season area. But you really, to do it right in Minnesota, you'd have to put an insulated wall, is what I would call it, because the old warm window quilts aren't going to make it in the wintertime in a moist climate zone, because then you'll have condensation on your glass. So there's all these problem areas depending on where you are. And we're going to have that written down. When we do a work authorization and we start somebody's plan, that's the first thing we do. What climate zones, what's the base temperature in the wintertime, what's your average winter design temperature, what's your average summer temperature, the heating degree days, cooling degree days, all that stuff. We want to know it. and we change our designs, we change our insulation types that we suggest depending on that. So,
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Dennis, because that it would be considered a humid area. I just checked it. It's about 50 to 70% throughout the day. So yeah, it is pretty high. So
Yeah.
yeah. Perfect. We,
did we answer that one, Claire?
yeah,
I think that's everything, unless Ken, if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, yeah, if I could get, Dennis, I was looking at an older Dome Talk, and somebody else had asked a similar question about building down in the southwest and the south area. And you had mentioned something about in certain areas you wouldn't have a ventilated dome.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that kind of applies down in this Austin, San Antonio area.
Yeah, put the map back up again, Aaron, on there. There's a white line that runs across the southern states. Now, that line is moved up. It's not the Mason-Dixon line. It's a line that below that line, and we really push it to the almost to the top of the states that are there. All those brown colors, the zone 3 down there, we're going to say do not ventilate because it's too moist. Now, take the brown line in zone 3 in Texas, and it's on the west side of that black line, the vertical line, that's dry. That's a different story. But on the east side of that, all those southern states, we don't want you to take in the outside moist air and go into the wall cavity, because if you're venting your dome, well, I shouldn't say there's only one way, but generally you're going to use fiberglass insulation. And you need to stop that moist air from getting into your insulation. So now you need a moisture barrier that's permeable from a standpoint of moisture, but stops the air from coming into the insulation after you've let it into the wall cavity. Here we are in Minnesota up here, it's a different story. I have in this dome here in Bear Creek Dome, leave the map up there, we've got a ventilated dome. There are air intakes at the top of the riser wall, the bottom of the triangles, and around the base of the cupola, there is ventilation up there. So the warm air rises, so it's just sort of a natural current there. We have space between the insulation and the outside panel, a 2-inch space. We have 16 inches of insulation and a 2-inch ventilated airspace. We also have an air barrier, moisture barrier on the inside of our dome because we want to stop the inside air from going into that wall cavity, which in the wintertime has too much moisture in it and will condense at the dew point. So we've gone a lot to a hybrid system. You want to explain the hybrid system, Derek?
Yeah. So the hybrid system essentially is, depending on where you're located on this map, you'll need a certain percentage. You can accomplish the best of both worlds, I guess, where you can have a certain amount of closed cell spray foam that will get you beyond the dew point Dennis was referring to, so you don't have to worry about the condensation issues. But then you can make up the remainder of your desired R value out of a less expensive fiberglass insulation. So it's kind of a nice option depending on where you are. Like we had a customer who's building in North Carolina right now, and they only needed 10% of their total R value to be closed cell foam to accomplish this, which was roughly, 1 to 2 inches is all they had to put in there, just an inch really, of closed cell foam. And then that meant they no longer had to worry about dealing with a vapor barrier on the inside. Or in this case, it would have been a non-ventilated dome. So they would have had a one-way permeable vapor barrier, like a smart membrane. So it kind of negates the need of a vapor barrier if you're able to get past the dew point with the closed cell foam. So up where we are in Minnesota is 50% of your total R value. So if you wanted an R60, you would need to have 30 of those of that R value be in the form of closed cell foam. But it does allow you to essentially get a desired R value a little less expensive than if you did all closed cell foam. So it's a good option, especially if you're in a more mild climate and you don't need as large a percentage of the closed cell foam. It becomes a very good way to save the labor of the interior vapor barrier and the complications with that. So
One more part of this discussion is we were out building, not we, but the owners were building a dome in Salt Lake City. And he wanted it to be, high R value. So we were shooting for the 70s, mid 70s. We did an 18-inch thick wall. And we were going to do 16 inches of fiberglass and a ventilated airspace. But when it got to that point, the building inspector came along and said, "Oh, no, you're not going to do that. I don't want that." I said, "What do you want us to do?" He said, "You're going to not ventilate the dome because it's a dry climate zone. The only way you want to ventilate, the only place you want to ventilate between the insulation and the outside panel is the moist climate zone area in the wintertime to get rid of condensation." So then what do? Well, he said, "I want the entire cavity filled with 18 inches of what is called permeable insulation, which in this case was 18 inches of our high density fiberglass. No ventilation." I said, "What do you want on the inside?" He said, "I want you using CertainTeed Smart Membrane," which is, now there's the chart right there. Concentrate on that one there, Aaron, a minute. The Smart Membrane is much more expensive than your normal cheap 6 mil plastic, but it allows moisture to migrate through it in the summertime, but not the wintertime. And so we're dealing with this new kind of system. This is 6-8 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. So this is where it's evolved in that climate zone. In fact, we have another dome right now in the design stages going into that same area south of Salt Lake City, plus several in Colorado that are up at 9,000 feet. And another one over in, well, actually more than one in Joshua Tree in California, the high desert. So it's what's called a hot roof if you don't ventilate. And people are worried about the shingles. Oh, the shingles are going to deteriorate. You have to ventilate below the asphalt shingles. Well, you don't. The studies are out there. The studies have shown, don't go to a black shingle maybe, but stay with the lighter colored. They actually have some that are designed for the hot climate zones that are a lighter color. Special reflecting shingles that reflect more of the sunlight. So this chart that you see here is on our website underneath the insulation. There's the climate zone on your left. What R value do you want? Almost the entire country is in an R60 minimum. That's where it is. Texas might be, what used to be 39 is now 49. What used to be 49 is now 60, 60. So
we lose you there, Dennis?
we could, but you want to do other things. People talk about the point of diminishing returns. Well, what's the cost of energy going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now? You can't, it's not easy to come back and change your R factor in your roof. So we have this mapped out. We have a chart. If you want to do all fiberglass, you can do the chart below. You want to do the hybrid system. Here's the climate zone you're in, and here's what you should do according to the new 2021 code, which I'm not sure outside of California. In fact, they have their own special that they do, California Special 2021 section. But Minnesota's still operating under a 2018 code, as most states are. So this is what's coming up. I mean, you have to understand, you're going to build a house and follow a code that's 3 years, 6 years, 9 years behind. You don't want to do that. What's happening now? The 2021 code, this is 2023. We're already 2 years into that. Every 3 years, they change the code. So now the next code they're working on is the 2024 code. And that will come out sometime late 24 or early 25. So we look at, what are they doing? What are they going to change? You want to go to a website, if you're interested in that, it's buildingscience.com. And this is a group of people that actually, Joe Stabrick has written parts of the code, helps direct part of the code as to what they do, because they do building science. They actually do they've constructed many exactly similar houses and monitored them, and then made that public information. So you will see anything you want to see from the building science, that's the site to go to.
Yeah. All right.
Excellent. So that was yeah, I think that was for Ken's question. So you got anything else to add on that one? That was a good discussion there.
No, I think that answered it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Good.
That's great. So next one we have George from Quaker Hill, Connecticut. He wants to ask, we can talk about domes with a full basement using ICF blocks, and specifically how the beams and floor joists sit on top of the basement wall, how the riser walls connect through them into the concrete, and how does the sheathing on the riser walls connect with the rigid foam on the exterior of the basement. So I'll try to get some pictures up for that so people have an idea of what that looks like.
Sure. I'm going to move this camera around here. Get my props out here. Let me just show this first, Aaron. You can get those pictures ready, but here's a bracket that we have. This is a Simpson bracket. It's a hold down bracket. And there is a little saddle that sits in here, that fits in here like this. And then this is the anchor rod, I'll call it, that slips up through here and comes up into it, and then you put a nut on the top of it. So that's what you're dealing with. This is going to go down into your concrete. This rod is going to go down in your concrete. So if you've got some pictures up there, put them up on the insulated concrete forms, which are filled with concrete. They're like a Legos block. There you can see this long-armed pumper truck, multi-armed pumper truck, that actually pumps the concrete to where it has to go, so that it can go down into the insides of that, although they're steel reinforcing, but they have a lot of rods that they use to make sure there's no air pockets down there, that the concrete goes down all the way to the bottom. This is going to give you an insulated wall. The lower left picture, when you look at that, I think the outside edge might have a little more insulation than the inside edge. There are many, many different brands of this. We've used ARX, ARXX, and Quadlock, and a few others. This is what you want. You want a contractor who's put these blocks together and used them successfully. It's ideal in, of course, a cold climate zone. Now you get down into Texas, that's not going to work because you got termites. So you got to watch your termite zones for using this and foam, because the termites love to burrow holes up through that and sneak into the house or get into the wood product. But how do you anchor it? The rod can be drilled in. The rod that I showed you, threaded rod, can be drilled into the concrete. And then it goes up through the floor, and the floor is going to have a 2 by 10, 2 by 12, 2 by 8 treated plate sitting on top of that concrete. And at that point, you drill through that and drill into your concrete, use a 2-part epoxy adhesive or what's called a Simpson Titan bolt, Titen, that you can actually, with a socket set, screw into it. So you can stay on the foam block. Are you looking for what?
Oh, yeah.
I know. We don't have Tanner here who's just got this thing memorized, and Aaron's trying to figure out where all his pictures went to.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing while I try to figure that out again.
So you're going to have an anchorage down into that concrete. You need these brackets. They go up, and the bracket is tied into the side of our 3 by 10 corner that's in the concrete. It's in the riser wall. So this is the 3 by 10 corner right here in this riser wall. So at the base of that, well, there's furniture's in the way, but at the base of that, that has a connection into the concrete slab that we have. And all of our domes are going to have that connection with a similar bracket. There's this kind, and there's also one that's an L-shaped called an HTT4. This is an HDU4, or maybe this is a 2. This is a 2. If you're in a heavy tornado area, you want this instead of this. So you get many more screws going into that 3 by 10 than you do with this one. So this will hold a lot more. So that's the other part of the design that you're going to have from us as it relates to the foundation, as it relates to holding this dome down to the ground. It's critical. We get tornadoes here in Minnesota. Do we get them up in northern Minnesota? I don't think so. I shouldn't say that so emphatically. But I know early on I think it was the 60s, there was a tornado that went through some of the northern suburbs of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Did some great damage. But we don't often get them in the city area. But we do get tornadoes. And this is now more widespread. And you've seen this year more tornadoes, I think, than usual in that whole southern area region. So I look at pictures when they show the aftermath of the tornado coming through, and the roof is gone. Well, guess what? They didn't use a little clip like this that ties the roof rafter down to your wall. There's nothing on their house that does that. This takes extra time. I mean, gee, I think this runs about 75 cents a piece. Might even be cheaper in quantity. 50 cents a piece to run this little thing up. But it's more time, more effort. And you would not lose a roof off of a house if it was properly anchored with that or the other connected hardware systems that you want. We built a dome in North Carolina on the beach. And the second dome was built in 1998. So we're talking, say, roughly 25 years. Gone through several category 1, 2, and 3. I don't think they had a 4 there on Topsail Island. we bought in 1998 dollars, we bought somewhere around $1,500 in strap ties, brackets, connections, all stainless steel nails, all this stuff that you have to have, partly because you're on the beach, partly because you're in the hurricane area. So again, get your contractors, if you're going to do this correct, make sure they understand that they've got to do this. They can't just bypass it. I've forgotten on our last question, couple of our last questions here. We're talking about in the last, just 2 weeks probably, or 2 to 3 weeks, dealing with, and I'm going to add the contractor in today that I talked to
Oh,
out on the in Colorado, where you need to be on your building site. You need to be an advocate for yourself. You need to be an advocate for us on your building site. If you're going to hire any contractor from foundation through HVAC systems, it's just incredible what we have dealt with 4 different contractors, including today's, that it's her laying out, and this is the thing in what we're dealing with, is laying out the dome, and it's a mathematical structure. And I said, well, I suppose, he said, it didn't work. And what they did is they started at this end and went all the way around, and they ended up, get this, Derek, 11 inches off.
oh,
How can you be 11 inches off? You only got 15 sides to this thing. So
Right.
that's the concrete guy. Geez.
yeah, yeah.
So, Derek, I think what I not solved, but I'm going to have, one of the things I'm going to do is we're going to put our cell phone numbers right on the blueprint and say, if we don't hear from you, you're making a mistake.
Yeah, right.
Basically,
Yeah. Well, and a lot of this stuff is, honestly, building a dome doesn't require any special skill set over building a conventional house. It's just some of these things are basic building practices that you would apply on any heated or cooled structure. And it's amazing. I mean, part of it could just be that the housing whole market is on fire right now. So we're getting to the bottom of the barrel of builders out there. I don't know, but everybody's trying to build maybe, but it's pretty amazing, because that's been like 3 or 4 and just in a couple of weeks that, it's kind of like, what kind of question is this? This is like elementary level questions. And, I'm glad they're calling, because you can really cause a lot of problems if you miss some details building a home, especially when it comes to your water and vapor mitigations, so yeah, it's good they're calling, but it's also scary a little bit. So
yeah, a little bit. I don't know if his niece is on the small group we have here, but really, Tanner's not here. Aaron,
Hey.
want to read most of that last question?
Yeah, this is from Denise, right, in Pennsylvania. Let's see. Denise has an original Bucky design, 39-foot, 3-frequency, low-profile dome, with the roof being redone in 2021, and ever since then has sadly been dealing with a leak issue. After the 3rd repair, which was removing a 1/3 of the dome and starting over, seems to finally be starting to dry. But now have to figure out how to deal with the repairs of what happened inside and trying to guess at where the leak actually was. So sort of removing panels and removing the wet insulation. The question that Denise had was, is spray insulation recommended since the roof really has no airflow inside the walls, or should I stick with normal roll-in sheets? So I guess again with the spray foam versus fiberglass and the different combinations there.
Yeah, so if you are here, Denise, and you are able to, if you have a microphone or something, you can chime in. This would be a great one for you to be able to talk with. I know, I think we're still waiting to get some photos from you to really see for sure what's going on, but this is a perfect example of what Dennis and I were just talking about. So we do offer a roofing manual through our website. Simply because a dome roof is very easy to do, but when you overlap the triangles, there is a certain way to do it right, and there's a way to do it wrong. And sometimes people do it wrong, and I'm not sure what they did in this job, but obviously if somebody does your roof, you should not have a leak from it, no matter what kind of structure they're roofing. So they may have done it incorrectly. So we do have that roofing manual to try to make sure people do the job correctly in the first place. But now that your roof is hopefully dried in and working how it was supposed to, and you're going to deal with an insulation, considering it's an original Buckminster Fuller dome, I'm assuming that it might only have a 2x4 or 2x6 frame. And if that's the case, spray and foam would probably be your best option, because not only does spray and foam work great as an air barrier, and if it's closed cell, it also works for your vapor barrier. But you're also going to get your highest R value per inch, very dense insulation. So if you only had maybe a 2x4, you only have 3.5 inches to work with. That gives you the opportunity to get at least into the upper 20s, you know, almost 30, including all your plywood layers and everything else. So that would probably be my recommendation. In our domes, we can do any thickness you want, so you're able to do a lot more stuff. But if you have an older dome, sometimes because domes are so inherently strong, a lot of times the framework was made out of very light lumber, like a 2x4 or 2x6, which doesn't leave you a lot of space for insulation. So what do you think, Dennis?
Well, you're also dealing with the method that we just saw a couple times here. A roofer comes along and he goes, okay, well, how do I do a dome? And we give you in your construction manual this dome roofing section, but it's also available online on our website. And we charge $30 just for the use of it, whatever you want to call it, because we know we're going to get some questions. But it's a manual that shows you how to overlap the shingles. This is an asphalt shingle that we're talking about. It can also be done with the Reinke aluminum shakes. Same basic laying of one point down triangle over the other point up triangle. So the roofer comes along and he says, oh yeah, I can do this. I know how to do this. Not a problem. Talks to the owner, convinces the owner. I have to say it this way. It's this male ego that gets in the way. We're dealing with somebody, oh yeah, I know how to do it. And he's never done it before. But he sees all these angles. Here they are, all these angles on this dome. Oh, we need ridge caps on those. And he puts a ridge cap along every joint. But he only runs the shingles so they end right at the joint line. So they butt up against it. Or he says, oh, I want to make all of these shingles here go horizontally. Well, you get up a little higher, they can't. But he wants them to do that, so when he gets to the joint line, he cuts them. And that cut is then covered with this ridge cap that runs down. The rain goes right behind the ridge cap because it's an edge. The shingle's here, and there's this edge that it goes behind. And we've got pictures that show that. This shingle is wet. The shingle below it is wet. The ridge cap's perfectly dry. So where does it go? In the joint. What do you have for an underlayment? Oh, some cheap stuff, you know, or they only use felt paper because that's what they used for the last 40 years. Well, that's wrong. There's just so many things, so much technology and product that's improved dramatically even in the last 5 years, let alone 10 to 15 years. The shingle itself, Malarkey shingles, when Dan Newcomb, our roofer that roofs in the 3-state area here, he tried these Malarkey shingles. They finally got a plant down in Oklahoma, so they were available through our distributors here. So Dan did the first roof using Malarkey Legacy shingles. He basically called us and said, that's it, I'm switching. No more duration, no more Timberlite Ultras. This is such a much better shingle on the dome because it's a modified asphalt shingle. It's a situation that it can bend over that joint line. It's also got Scotchgard on the thing. And there's little copper granules in it. Anyway, the roofing thing is a big deal. And to have a leak in your roof, it just, as Derek said, you do not have to have it, and don't accept it. And that's also why we're saying you need to be on your roof. All of these domes in those pictures that you see, it's an overlap of the point down triangle over the point up triangle. That's the pattern that you're seeing on all these roofs that are in front of you. So if you don't do that, if he says, oh no, I don't do it that way, then you say, well, I guess you won't do this job. Basically do it. Don't let him do anything close to that. Yeah, you're running into a little problem, right, aren't you, Aaron? It's trying to enlarge the pictures that don't enlarge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But when you buy a dome from us, your packing list comes to you, and we give it to you before that time. But you get my cell phone number, you get Derek's cell phone number, you actually get Tessa's cell phone number too. She'll find me wherever I happen to be if I don't answer my phone. She'll find Derek somewhere too.
Yep.
We have to have somebody on that site watching what these contractors are doing. From the dome in Pennsylvania, where they just, 5 times the amount of concrete was used. They didn't have to do it that way, but that's the way they've always been doing it. They didn't build a form, they used the dirt in the inside, and they just did a 45-degree slope when they should have done a wall like this and poured concrete into it. That's more work. And it's more cost? Yeah, it might be more cost, but not more cost than $60,000 in concrete. We're seeing a bid coming in from Joshua Tree for $75,000 to do a concrete slab. For what? We understand what should be done on the dome. We understand the new building science. We understand the technology. And the contractors that are out there, if you let them, they'll keep doing the same thing they've been doing. But the one that you want to work on your site is one that says, oh, this looks interesting. This looks like something that I might have some fun with. That's the kind of person that you want working on your dome. But all the way along through all of it, you need to be there. If you're hours away, you may have some problems. If you live nearby, visit that site every day or at least every other day and see what's going on and work with that local contractor. We don't have a contracting crew. We used to have a crew that could go out. Everybody got older and got kids, and guess what? We don't have a contracting crew. So a lot of these issues, a lot of these problems are not problems. The question the lady has with this roofing system and leaking, that should never happen from day one.
Right.
We don't have all the answers. There may be some that we have to look at and say, well, gee, what would be the best situation? And several times I'll say to the local contractor, what's your standard practice in your area for doing whatever you're doing? And talk to them about it. Derek was just down on a site in Missouri where they did some things that were handled not correctly, but had they called, had they dealt with them, it would have been done just fine.
Right. Yep, and if they would have done it correctly, it would have added just a small amount of time to the job, less than a day. And they'd have no worries. And since then, there's been multiple days already spent, and there's gonna be many, many more days to correct it. So yeah, definitely would have been better to catch that before it happened, so. But, all right,
Any
well,
questions coming in there on the people have been asking, that small group that we have here?
yeah, I know that the chat's been pretty quiet, so
Yeah.
nothing,
Anybody of this, what have we got? 5 people here.
yeah, anybody, any
Anybody
last final
have
questions?
Posing questions?
I have an additional question about the ICF basement walls.
Sure.
Do the floor joists sit on top of the basement wall and then the riser wall on top of the joists, or how does that work?
Yes. The answer would be yes in about 95% of the cases.
Okay.
The ICF blocks also have a ledge block that sticks out that you could support a floor system on that, but it's not normal and it's not really needed. The block is a higher cost block. Normally, you build the wall, that concrete gets poured to the top of that ICF block, and you put a wood plate on top of that. And then you start your floor joist with a rim joist on the outside and your joist coming up to it. That sits right on top of that plate that you've got, a wood plate, treated wood plate.
Okay.
You put your plywood on there. Now you start your riser wall right on top of that. Our outside plywood, if we know that's what your design is and that's what you're building when you order the dome, our plywood on the riser wall runs all the way down the face of that rim joist. If we're drawing the plans, we know how deep that is, whether that's 10 inches or 12 inches, maybe it's 13.5 inches because there's a plate below it. So we're going to run the plywood down, and it stops because it's not treated plywood at that plate, that sill plate that's on top of the concrete. The foam on the outside is flush on the outside to the framing of our dome. Now we're going to talk to you about in some climate zones adding another 2 to 4 inches of foam on the outside of the ICF block and run that up depending on what you're doing, or foam the inside of the rim joist to get more insulation. So there's a variety of things that happen on that, but it's very conventional structure at that point.
Okay. Thank you very much. That clears it up for me.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Well, yeah, if you don't have any more questions, then I guess, hey, we're only 10 minutes over this week, which is pretty good.
We couldn't drag it out anymore, I guess.
If we really wanted to, I'm sure we could try.
yeah, well, great,
Yeah,
great.
right. Dome School is a week from this weekend.
Yeah.
Come up
Dome
quick.
School is a great resource if you're thinking of building a dome or you're just fascinated by it. Like, I highly recommend. That's how I ended up actually being here, is I went to Dome School last summer and it was a lot of fun. Meet a lot of cool people, and the food's really good too.
And he was such an A student, we hired him. Gee.
Yeah, weird.
He passed all the tests. Yeah, right. There's no tests.
Yeah.
A lot of information. But we only have one a year. That's what we're down to at this point. Partly because we are so busy. It takes a lot to put into it, but we highly recommend that. If you can plan that into your schedule, that's great. However, if you don't, or you're too far away, you don't want to spend the money on the airfare and the motels, we have a virtual dome school online. $195. Basically, we filmed an actual dome school and edited that down to about 11 hours, 12 hours, somewhere in that range. So you can buy that and watch it at your leisure, stop it, come back to it, look up different things that you want. It is got a nice index to it, segregated. So that's a nice way to do it. We had a dome tour just recently. The next dome tour that we have will be a pretty big tour because we're planning on this in October, the first Saturday in October in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. It doesn't work well. We tried it this time with not much notice, but we tried some segregated sites across the country, a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them. And we need to group some domes, and we have some domes coming up in the Colorado central, eastern or central Colorado area, south of Denver. We also have a couple of domes being built in northern New Mexico. So we've got some areas there which could be worked out with the customers that they can open up their domes to look at, and some other areas where we got more than one dome available to see. So, or if it's under construction, we sometimes do that where the owner likes to open it up and talk about it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely worth going to see some of these domes if you haven't before ever actually been in one, or if you're looking for ideas and seeing what other people have done, what other people have done in their climate zones, all those kinds of things. Yeah, it's really cool when we get other natural spaces domes owners to show off their stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
Cool. Well, I guess at that rate, I guess we'll wrap it up. And yeah, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week, or sorry, next month at Dome Talk.
All right,
all right,
guys.
thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye. Thanks.